Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel where we bring you the most explosive NFL news and analysis. If you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, you're going to want to buckle up for this one, because we've got some absolutely wild developments that could shake the entire NFC North to its core. I'm talking about a potential reunion that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming just a few weeks ago. We're diving deep into the Stefon Diggs saga, the Vikings' free agency strategy, and some sneaky under-the-radar targets that could transform this roster. But before we get into all that juicy content, make sure you smash that like button, drop a comment with your hottest takes, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. So here's the bombshell that dropped and sent shockwaves through the NFL world. The New England Patriots, fresh off a Super Bowl appearance where they fell to the Seattle Seahawks, have made the stunning decision to release wide receiver Stefon Diggs. Yes, you heard that right. The same Stefon Diggs, who just led their team in receiving yards with over 1,000 yards, is getting cut loose. The same veteran leader who was instrumental in helping rookie sensation Drake May develop into an MVP runner-up. The same guy who caught 85 passes and helped drag New England to the biggest game of the year. Gone, cut, released, and the NFL rumor mill is already churning with whispers about where he might land next. Now, before we dive into the Vikings angle, let's talk about why the Patriots made this move, because on the surface, it makes absolutely zero sense. Diggs wasn't just productive last season, he was essential. He hauled in 85 receptions for 1,013 yards and 4 touchdowns during the regular season. He was Drake May's security blanket, his go-to guy when things got tough. The locker room loved him. Head coach Mike Vrabel praised his leadership repeatedly. So what happened? Well, it all comes down to cold, hard cash, baby. The business side of football rears its ugly head once again. Diggs was set to see his salary cap charge skyrocket from $10.5 million in 2025 to a whopping $26.5 million in 2026. That's a massive jump, and for a team trying to build around a young quarterback and manage their cap space, it was just too much to swallow. Plus, Diggs had an additional $6 million set to become fully guaranteed if he remained on the roster past mid-March. The Patriots did the math and decided that saving $16.8 million in cap space was worth more than keeping their number one receiver. It's a brutal calculation, but that's the NFL for you. One day you're catching passes in the Super Bowl, the next day you're looking for a new job. The business never stops, and sentiment takes a back seat to dollars and cents every single time. But here's where things get really spicy for Vikings fans. With Diggs now available on the open market, people are starting to connect the dots and ask the million-dollar question: could Stefon Diggs actually return to Minnesota? Now, I know what you're thinking. The same Stefon Diggs who demanded a trade, the same guy who had that messy breakup with the Vikings organization, the same receiver who essentially forced his way out of Minnesota to join the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, that guy. And I'll admit, when I first heard this rumor, I thought it was absolutely insane. But the more you dig into the Vikings' current situation, the more it starts to make a twisted kind of sense. Let's talk about Minnesota's receiver situation, because it's not exactly stable right now. The Vikings are staring down the barrel of losing Jalen Nailor in free agency, and that's a bigger deal than some people realize. Nailor emerged as a legitimate weapon in 2025, showing incredible chemistry with quarterback J.J. McCarthy. He's got blazing speed. He's a willing blocker, he runs crisp routes, and he's the kind of receiver that defensive coordinators have to account for on every single snap. The problem? Nailor just turned 27, he's coming off his best season, and according to multiple reports, more than 10 teams are eyeing him when free agency opens. Some projections have him signing a contract worth anywhere from $12 to $15 million per year. And for a Vikings team that's currently over the salary cap by about $45 million, that's just not realistic. Minnesota doesn't have the financial flexibility to get into a bidding war for their own player. So if Naylor walks, and it's looking increasingly likely that he will, the Vikings suddenly have a gaping hole at the wide receiver 3 position. Sure, they've got Justin Jefferson locked up at $35 million per year, and Jordan Addison is still on his rookie deal, though he's eligible for an extension and comes with his own off-field question marks after multiple legal issues. But after those two, what do they have? Ty Felton? An unproven commodity who's never been a full-time contributor? That's not exactly inspiring confidence for a team with Super Bowl aspirations. The Vikings need veteran depth at receiver, someone who can step in and contribute immediately, someone who knows how to win, someone who can be a mentor to younger players. And hey, Stefon Diggs checks all those boxes. Now, let's talk about what Diggs brings to the table at this stage of his career. The man is 32 years old, which in NFL receiver years is getting up there. He's also coming off a torn ACL from 2024 when he was with the Houston Texans, though he proved he could still play at a high level by topping 1,000 yards in New England last season. He's not the same explosive number 1 receiver he was during his prime years with the Vikings and Bills, but as a number 3 option, that could absolutely work. Think about it. Defenses have to dedicate their best coverage to Jefferson. They have to respect Addison's deep threat ability, and then here comes Diggs running a route from the slot, using his veteran savvy and route-running expertise to find soft spots in the zone. That's a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses. And here's the kicker. Diggs is probably going to be cheap, like really cheap. After the Patriots just cut him, his market value has taken a massive hit. He's not going to command the big money he once did. He's looking at a 1-year deal, maybe 2 years max, probably in the range of $5 to $10 million. For a Vikings team that needs to make every dollar count, that's the kind of value signing that could make sense. It's low risk, potentially high reward. If Diggs comes in and produces like he did in New England, giving you 800 to 1,000 yards and serving as a reliable third option, that's fantastic value for the money. If it doesn't work out, you cut ties after 1 year and move on. No long-term commitment, no massive financial burden. But, and this is a huge, but we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Stefon Diggs is not exactly a low-drama guy. Throughout his entire NFL career, going back to his days in Minnesota, he's had a reputation for being difficult when things aren't going his way. He's been involved in sideline blow-ups, cryptic social media posts, and tense relationships with coaches and front office personnel. The Vikings know this better than anyone. They lived through it. They dealt with the headaches. And after everything that went down with Jordan Addison over the last couple years, the multiple arrests, the legal issues, the off-field drama, do they really want to invite more potential chaos into their locker room? And then there's the legal situation we need to address. Diggs has a pre-trial hearing scheduled for April 1st on some serious charges: felony strangulation and misdemeanor assault and battery stemming from an alleged incident with his personal chef. He's pleaded not guilty, and obviously everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but this is exactly the kind of off-field situation that teams want to avoid. The Vikings have been burned before by players with legal issues. They've dealt with the media circus, the public relations nightmares, the distractions that come with having a player facing criminal charges. Do they really want to sign up for that again, especially for a player who's on the back nine of his career? From a pure football standpoint, on paper, Diggs makes sense. An aging veteran receiver coming off a major injury 2 years ago who could sign a short-term contract for affordable money to fill a position of need. That's the kind of move teams make all the time. But when you factor in the history between Diggs and the Vikings organization, the messy breakup, the way he forced his way out, plus all the current off-field drama and legal troubles, it starts to look like more trouble than it's worth. The Vikings under Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah have been trying to build a culture, a specific type of locker room environment. They want high-character guys who buy into the program. Diggs, for all his talent, doesn't exactly fit that mold right now. But here's something interesting to consider. Should Stefon Diggs retire as a Minnesota Viking? Forget about whether he plays for them again. I'm talking about a one-day contract, a ceremonial signing so he can officially end his career wearing purple and gold. Because let's be real, Diggs had some absolutely legendary moments in a Vikings uniform. For fans of a certain age, myself included, Diggs was one of the first players we really fell in love with. And then there's the moment, the Minneapolis Miracle, the most iconic play in Vikings history, period. Diggs hauling in that 61-yard touchdown pass from Case Keenum as time expired to beat the Saints in the divisional round of the playoffs. The raw emotion, the absolute pandemonium in US Bank Stadium, the way he ripped off his helmet and sprinted down the sideline. That's Vikings lore. That's the stuff of legend. And for that alone, maybe Diggs deserves to go out as a Viking, regardless of how the relationship ended. Now let's pivot to the other major storyline that just broke. The Chicago Bears trading DJ Moore to the Buffalo Bills. This is massive NFC North news that Vikings fans need to be paying attention to. The Bears just shipped their veteran #1 receiver to Buffalo in exchange for a second-round pick, and they're also sending a fifth-rounder to the Bills as part of the deal. This trade tells us a lot about where the Bears are headed and what kind of division the Vikings are going to be competing in next season. For Chicago, this move is all about youth and cap space. Moore had a career-worst season under new head coach Ben Johnson, catching only 50 passes for 682 yards. The emergence of tight end Colston Loveland and wide receivers Rome Odunze and Luther Burden III made Moore expendable, especially with his $28.5 million cap hit looming. By moving him, the Bears save $16.5 million in cap space that they can now use to address their secondary, which is loaded with free agents. For Buffalo, they're getting a proven veteran who already has experience in new head coach Joe Brady's system from their time together in Carolina. Moore and Brady had some incredibly productive years with the Panthers, and Josh Allen desperately needed another legitimate weapon after the Bills have been struggling at receiver. What does this mean for the Vikings? It means the NFC North is still wide open, and the division rival you thought might be rebuilding is actually still trying to compete. The Bears aren't tanking. They're retooling on the fly, getting younger and faster, while also creating financial flexibility to make moves. The Vikings can't afford to stand pat and assume they'll just waltz through the division. Every team is making moves, every front office is looking for an edge, and Minnesota needs to be aggressive if they want to stay ahead of the pack. So let's talk about 5 sneaky free agent targets that could make sense for the Vikings. These aren't the big-name, headline-grabbing signings. Minnesota doesn't have the cap space for that. But on the margins, adding the right players at the right price could be the difference between a good team and a great team. First up, James Pierre, cornerback out of Pittsburgh. The Vikings just hired Gerald Alexander from the Steelers to be their defensive pass game coordinator, replacing Darius Jones. Alexander worked closely with Pierre in Pittsburgh, and Pierre absolutely balled out last season in limited snaps. Out of 33 targets, he only allowed 14 completions for 142 yards. He had 11 pass breakups and 1 interception, with a quarterback rating allowed of just 52.8. For a Brian Flores defense that doesn't prioritize cornerback as much as safety, edge rusher, and linebacker, Pierre represents the kind of value signing that could significantly upgrade the secondary without breaking the bank. Next, Key Walker, linebacker formerly of the Green Bay Packers. Walker was a first-round pick out of Georgia in the loaded 2022 linebacker class, but he hasn't quite lived up to expectations. He struggled last year and was somewhat disappointing for Packers fans. But this is where a coach like Brian Flores could work his magic. Flores has a track record of getting the most out of athletic linebackers, and Walker has the physical tools to thrive in Minnesota's defensive scheme. If you could get him on a 2-year, $18 million deal to play alongside Blake Cashman, that's the kind of calculated risk that could pay huge dividends. At safety, keep an eye on Reed Blankenship from Philadelphia. Now, his PFF grades aren't spectacular. Out of 107 qualified safeties last season, he ranked pretty low with an overall grade of 46.5 and a coverage grade of 32.7. But he's played in massive games. He's been the last line of defense for a Super Bowl contender, and he has big game experience. If the Vikings don't want to use pick 18 on a safety and instead go defensive tackle or linebacker, Blankenship could be a cost-effective option to pair with Jay Ward in the secondary. For the offensive line, Connor McGovern makes a ton of sense. the Vikings need to address the center position, whether through the draft or free agency. McGovern had the 16th best PFF grade among all centers last season at 69.1. And here's the kicker. He played over 1,000 snaps and allowed 0 sacks. 0. That kind of consistency is exactly what Minnesota needs at the pivot position. At 28 years old, he's young enough to be a long-term solution, potentially giving the Vikings 3 to 4 years of quality play at a premium position. Finally, another safety option, Andre Cisco from the New York Jets. Cisco barely played last season after getting hurt, appearing in only 8 games with 41 tackles. But before the injury, he had a reputation as a ball-hawk safety with versatility in his game. If you could sign him to a 1-year prove-it deal for $3 or $4 million, that's the kind of low-risk flyer that could turn into a steal if he returns to form. The common thread with all 5 of these potential targets is value. The Vikings aren't going to be players for the big-ticket free agents. They can't afford to get into bidding wars. But by being smart, by identifying players who fit their scheme, who have connections to their coaching staff, who might be undervalued by the market, Minnesota can still upgrade their roster around the margins. That's how championship teams are built. Not every move has to be a splashy headline. Sometimes the best moves are the ones nobody sees coming until they're on the field making plays. Look, at the end of the day, the Stefon Diggs reunion is probably more fantasy than reality. The history between him and the Vikings organization is complicated, the legal situation is concerning, and the team has made it clear they want to prioritize character and culture fit. But in the NFL, never say never. Stranger things have happened. If Diggs is willing to take a team-friendly deal, if he's willing to embrace a reduced role, if he can show that he's matured and moved past the drama that's followed him throughout his career, then maybe, just maybe, there's a path back to Minnesota. It would be one of the wildest storylines of the offseason. But regardless of whether Diggs ends up back in purple, the Vikings have work to do. Free agency is less than a week away, and every decision they make over the next few weeks will shape their 2026 season and beyond. They need to address the receiver room after losing Naylor. They need to continue building depth on defense. They need to make smart, calculated moves that maximize value while staying within their budget constraints. It's a delicate balancing act, and there's zero margin for error when you're trying to compete in a loaded NFC and a brutal NFC North division. The Chicago Bears just made a huge move trading DJ Moore. The Detroit Lions are still the defending conference champions. The Green Bay Packers are always dangerous with Jordan Love at quarterback. The Vikings can't afford to sit back and hope things work out. They need to be aggressive, they need to be smart, and they need to capitalize on every opportunity that presents itself. Whether that includes Stefon Diggs or not remains to be seen. But one thing's for certain. This offseason is going to be absolutely wild, and Vikings fans are in for one heck of a ride. So that's my take on the Stefon Diggs situation and the Vikings offseason strategy. Now I want to hear from you. Would you bring back Stefon Diggs to Minnesota? Drop an S in the comments for sign, drop a P for pass. Tell me why you feel that way. What do you think about those 5 sneaky free agent targets? Who am I missing? What moves do you want to see the Vikings make? Let's get a conversation going in the comments section. And if you made it this far, you're a real one. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our Vikings coverage as free agency heats up. We've got some huge content coming your way over the next few weeks, breaking down every move, every signing, every trade. You're not going to want to miss a single video. Thanks
Hey
for
everyone,
watching
I'm
Skol
working
Vikings,
to hit
and
2,000
I'll see you in
subscribers
the
and I
next
need
one.
your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.